I see trees of green, red roses too. I see them bloom for me and you. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world. I see skies of blue and clouds of white, the bright blessed day, dark sacred night. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world. Of the rainbow, so pretty in the sky, and also on the faces of all the people going by. I see friends shaking hands, saying, how do you do? Saying, I love you. I hear babies cry, I watch them grow. More than I'll ever know. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world. What a wonderful world. What a wonderful world. What a wonderful world.
Words of Barbara Merritt. Unitarian Universalists have said for centuries that there is room in our religion for all seekers. Skeptics and poets and scientists are welcome here, as are nonconformists and shy and uncertain folk. We believe that restlessness and doubts are a sign of grace, that the love of truth is the holiest of gifts. At this time, I invite Elaine Wells to come forward and light the chalice for us here in the sanctuary. I think she may have stepped out for a moment, actually. Beth, would you light the chalice? All right, our longtime UU, Beth Conover, will light the chalice. And I invite you to join me in our chalice lighting words, and you can echo them line by line after me. That's great. We come as we are to church. Here we go. Spark of the Spirit, cupped in earth's embrace, light of love, alive in all creation. As we kindle this flame, we rekindle our connection to the sacred web of life. Thanks, Beth. Welcome to worship with the community of the First Unitarian Church of Omaha. I'm the Reverend Shari Woodbury, the church's minister, and it's good to be back with you all after a little time away this summer. Whether you're attending online or in person, I'm glad you have chosen to join us for worship this morning. Worship, which from the Latin means to remember that which is of worth, to call us back to our highest values. A special welcome to visitors. This congregation is a community of all ages and abilities. It is a community with a rainbow of gender and sexual identities. It is a community of diverse cultural and class backgrounds. We draw from many sources of inspiration and share common liberal religious values. Whoever you may be, we welcome you to bring your whole self into this community. Those in the sanctuary are invited after the service to adjourn to the common room, which is in the basement, out the back doors and down the stairs, where coffee, tea, and conversation are available. Thanks to Bethany Cook for doing coffee this morning. Each week we acknowledge that where we meet for worship as the First Unitarian Church of Omaha is the land of the Omaha Oto Nations, and that Indigenous people in the greater community have been marginalized and made invisible. We recognize their presence and aspire to work with Native people to resolve issues like poverty, displaced children, and the missing and murdered Indigenous women. Our opening song this morning is Butterfly Waltz by Crane, arranged by H.G. Stout, and we're delighted to welcome a special guest musician, Holly. Beautiful, thank you. I'd like to invite the kids up for a time for all ages. Christina's got something special to share with you from some of her activities this summer. If you're young or young at heart, you're welcome to come forward for this story.
Good morning. I'm Christina Strong, Director of Lifespan Religious Education here at First Unitarian, and I've been doing some traveling this summer to rekindle my own spiritual flame, and I'm happy to be back here with you. I have a story to share with you today that many of you may be familiar with. It's kind of become a UU classic, and it was read on Zoom by Samara Sanchez Soto for our December 2020 special service. I recently experienced this story in a new way, and it's a great fit for Reverend Shari's message today, so I hope you enjoy it. See if we can get some images here to go with it. All right, that first slide goes for a long time, so I'll start reading and we'll see. All right. Many years ago, on an island so far from the mainland that it felt like it was its own world, there was a village of small wooden houses with dark shingled roofs. The people in the village were of the Unitarian religion, and they wanted a church of their own. A church set on the hillside, they decided, looking down upon the village as a mother looks down upon a sleeping child. So all the people of the village labored long and hard to build themselves a church. The stonemasons hammered sharp chisels to cut great blocks of gray stone, and they set the stones into sturdy walls. The glaziers made tiny glass panes and fitted them neatly into the windows with leaded lines. The foresters sawed tall beech trees into enormous beams and laid the trusses for the ceiling, then covered the roof with close-fitting wooden shingles that wouldn't leak a drop of rain. The carpenters carved wood for a pair of wide opening doors, setting them on strong pegs so that the doors hung straight and square. A bell was brought from a faraway city, then hoisted by ropes to the top of the tower. The smiths hammered black iron into lamp holders and hammered thin bronze into shining oil lamps. All right. At the end of the day, when it was finished, when their church was finally done, all the people of the village stood back to admire it, and then to sing a song of happiness and praise. Could we go to lamp 1 file? Their village had a church now, a church set on the hillside, looking down upon the village as a mother looks down upon her sleeping child. All right. We will eat now, announced an elder of the village, because everyone was hungry after their long day's work, and later tonight we will come back to pray. So the people of the village went down the hillside to their homes and their suppers, all except one little girl named Zora and her father, who stayed behind. They had brought their own bread and cheese for dinner. They ate their food slowly, sitting on the grass on the hillside, and admiring their new church with its strong stone walls, its tall tower, and its magnificent bell. After they had eaten, they went back inside, opening those carved wooden doors to go into the glorious sanctuary inside. "Oh, look, Father," Zora cried, running around, with her footsteps echoing off the stone walls. "See how pretty the church is?" She stepped into the center of the church and twirled slowly around. "See how grand?" "Yes, it is," said her father, looking around and nodding with pride. "Yes, it is. But Father," she said, "we have not finished." What do you think a church needs besides walls and decoration and lamp holders and music. Anybody have any ideas? Oh, yeah. What do you think? What does a building need? A building needs walls and a roof and a floor and somewhere to sit and doors. What else does it need? People. What else? Food. We're talking about the building itself, the structure. It's kind of hard to think of right now because we actually wouldn't need it this morning. But at night, we might need lights. So her father said, "What do you mean?" And she said, "There are lamp holders all along the walls, but there are no lamps. The church will be dark when the people come back." "Ah, no, little one," said her father. "The light of the church comes from its people. You shall see." He rang the bell to call the people to worship, then took his daughter by the hand and led her back outside. They waited on the grassy hillside next to their beautiful church of strong gray stone. The sun had set behind the mountains, and night was coming soon. Yet in the growing darkness, tiny points of light came up from many directions and moved steadily up the hill. "Each family is entrusted with a lamp, little one," her father explained. "Each family lights its own way here." "Where is our family's lamp?" "Your mother is carrying it, and she will be here soon." The many lights moved closer together, gathering into one moving stream, all headed the same way, growing larger and brighter all the time. Can we play lamp 5? That's my favorite part. And hopefully it'll have audio. There we go. So there's the lamp holders.
Where are they?
Well, they were there. It's okay. If we can't get it to work out, I can just continue on. All right, I'm thinking I'll make this story available online later with illustrations and video. So here we are. So the people were all coming up the hill and everybody had their own light, just one light. Do you think that if you were carrying up like a lantern or a flashlight, do you think you could light this whole big building with that? What do you think?
No.
Probably not, right? But all the people came together and let's see what happened. Zora's mother arrived bearing a burning oil lamp in her hands. The father lifted Zora so she could set their family's lamp high in its tall iron stand. All around the church, other families were doing the same thing. Soon the church was ablaze with light in every corner, for all the people of the village had gathered to pray and sing. All through the worship service, Zora watched the lights flicker and glow. She watched her family's lamp most of all. When the service was over, her father lifted her high. She took the shining bronze lamp from the lampstand. Its curved sides were warm and smooth in her hands. Her mother carried the lamp home, with the flame lighting the way. The lamp flame lit their house when they returned home. Zora washed her face and got ready for bed by the light of that flame, the same flame that they'd had with them in church that day. "Mother," Zora began as she climbed into bed and lay down. "Yes, little one?" her mother asked, tucking the red wool blanket around Zora's shoulders. "Father said the light of the church comes from its people." "Yes, but also the people take their light from the church." Over on the table by the fireplace, the shiny bronze lamp was still burning, and we have that light every day. "Yes, indeed," said her mother, "and even when we are not in church, even when the lamp is not lit, we carry the light of truth in our minds and the flame of love in our hearts to show us the right way to be. That light, the light from truth and love, will never go out." "Never?" asked Zora. "Never," said her mother, "and this bronze lamp will last for many, many years. When you are grown, we will give the bronze lamp to you, and when your children are grown, you will give the lamp to them, and all of you will carry it back and forth to the church every time." "But we have only one lamp," Zora said. So make another and let the light grow, and someday tell your children to make more lamps too. And now good night, her mother said, and kissed Zora on the cheek. The years passed and Zora grew. The bronze lamp came into her care. She kept it polished and clean, and when the bell rang out across the valley to call the people to worship, she carried the lamp back and forth to the church on the hillside, the flame always lighting her way. When the time came, she made more lamps and gave them to her children, who made more lamps and gave them to their children. And so it went on through the years, even until today. And always, the light of truth and flame of love from the Unitarian Church on the hillside continued to grow and show them and us the way. Could we try the video file again? Okay, yep, it's not going to show up here. That's okay. All right, so I'll put this together and make it available to everyone online. But this video is of people carrying lanterns up a hill to a chapel that does not have any electric lights and a bunch of lamp holders on the walls while the church bell is ringing. And it was really something to experience in real life. I was at Star Island, which is in a cluster of islands called the Isle of Shoals off the coast of New England, sort of straddling the border between New Hampshire and Maine. And it's been a UU conference and retreat center since about 1916. And the UCC Church has conferences there now also. And every night for chapel, they had people, they had these lanterns available for people to pick up at the bottom of the hill, and they rang the bells and they walked up the hill. And it was quite an experience, and I must say I was very impressed by lantern technology, because it was a candle and some glass in a lantern, and it was windy on this island, and it stayed lit, and it lit up the whole building. Can we go to picture, go ahead and go to 9.3. I don't know if this will show up. And so I felt like I was familiar with the story, and I felt like, oh, they must have built this chapel after this story, right? Because I feel like I'm in this story. Well, it turns out that the chapel was originally built in the 1600s from some wood from a Spanish shipwreck, because there's not actually trees on the island that you could build with. And then sometime in the 1700s, it was burnt down by the villagers who were not happy about the various ministers sent there to try and Christianize them. They were European and Scandinavian immigrants, but they lived there for hundreds of years in a fisherman's village that apparently someone on the mainland felt needed missionaries. So they burned it down in the 1700s, and then it was rebuilt in the 1800s, and so the stone building standing today is from the 1800s, which is over 223 years old. And so I was like, oh yeah, so they didn't model this chapel after the story. It's probably the other way around. But it was a really beautiful experience, and I look forward to sharing those images with you. And if you could go to 9.4. It's a dog in a window. This one I threw in just for fun. So there's a minister on the island. There's ministers that come and go every week with the different conferences, but there's one who's always there. Yes! So you can barely see, there's a dog in this window, and she has a dog, and the dog knows that when the chapel bells start ringing, all of the people will be carrying the lanterns up the hill, and it's so cool that even the dog thinks it's cool, and he hops up in the window as soon as he hears the bells to see all these lights, all these people bringing their lights up to the chapel on the hill. So that's all for our story today, and anyone preschool through 12th grade that would like to join me now in the common room for donuts with the DRE, I look forward to talking to you and hearing about your summer.
Thank you, Christina. Wonderful to imagine and get a glimpse of what it was like having all those lamps come together. Every week, we take up an offering in support of our liberal religious values. Half of the loose currency in the offering plate is donated to a cause with a local presence, which advances important principles of Unitarian Universalism. Those on YouTube may choose to donate directly to the organization online. Our Share the Plate recipient for August is the Whitney Young Academy, which empowers youth through education and career preparation, through academic, personal, and social development, assisting with goal setting and grooming future leaders. This is a program of the Urban League of Nebraska, so you can learn more at their website, urbanleagueneb.org, and search for the Whitney Young Academy. And if you're donating online via the League's website, you can write Whitney Young Academy in the comment box. I invite you to give with a generous heart as we hear a gift of music, Rivers Flow in You by Urema. We come to the time for the sharing of joys and concerns. When we share our joys, they are multiplied. And we share our concerns, our community can offer its care. I haven't received any from the congregation this morning. Any week that you want to share one, you can write on the back of the yellow communication cards that are at the doors and put them in the bowl during the offertory, and they'll get brought to me. Let me check and see if our online folks have shared. Okay, not seeing any here. I know that whatever we choose to voice or not, there are surely many both joys and challenges faced by those here in the congregation. Let us hold in our hearts those persons among us in need of tender care, and also remember those who aren't here this morning. I invite you to hum with me, number 123, Spirit of Life. We'll just hum, no words. That beautiful melody, let us continue in a mood of meditation or prayer. I invite you to get comfortable in your seat and take a few deep breaths. You may wish to check your posture and rest your eyes. I will share a common prayer, after which you may choose to continue with your own reflection or meditation during a minute of shared silence. I'll ring the bell at the end of the silence to signal the time to open your eyes again. Spirit of life, come unto us in this gathered community, and this place with all the light coming through its windows and from its people and from the people online too. Feel our gratitude for the gifts and the challenges of this faith, which calls us to live lives of love and courage together in community. We lift up thanks also for the blessings of this summer, for whatever rest and renewal, whatever connection and joy has come into our lives in this time. Let us send out as well wishes for all of the members and friends of the congregation, whether they are present or not, whether they are in Omaha now or not. Let them know that they are not forgotten or uncared for. And we remember also the children and join in their excitement and perhaps nervousness and wish them well as they begin to return to school this week and in the coming weeks. Let us also, as our hearts are open and calm, set our intention to welcome into this community all of the people who might find here a spiritual home, a place to connect and search, to grow and serve. We are open and ready and joyful to meet them. Spirit of life, help us to feel palpably the deep interconnections among us and to honor and cherish this community. So may it be. Amen. a time of quiet for your own reflection. Our reading this morning comes from Edward L. Shimp, who writes, Unitarian Universalism is faith in people, hope for tomorrow's child, confidence in a continuity that spans all time. It looks not to a perfect heaven, but to a good earth. It is respectful of the past, but not limited to it. It is trust in growing and conspiracy with change. It is spiritual responsibility for a moral tomorrow. I was 22, the first time I set foot in a Unitarian Universalist church. The room where worship was held felt more like a lecture hall than a sanctuary. I liked the sunlight coming in through the windows on one wall, and the podium, adorned not by a cross, but by a chalice. What was that about? The minister was a crone, a white-haired woman with a gentle voice and short stature. That's different. After the service, people got up from the uncomfortable chairs, stacked the chairs, and pushed them against the walls. They then milled around drinking coffee and chatting in that same room. This place is kind of odd, I thought. But the people were friendly. I liked the hymns. One called Spirit of Life especially touched me. And I was intrigued by the minister's preaching. She quoted all kinds of things, only occasionally the Bible. I was new in the city, and a new friend in my graduate program had suggested to me that I would find myself at home among the Unitarians. She was right. I was intrigued immediately. After only a few visits, I knew I had found my spiritual home. I suppose some of the things that drew me to the UU Church are the sort of things that draw people all over to congregations of all kinds. It felt good to sing together, and I soon joined the choir. I began to make friends in the congregation, some of my dearest friends still today. Being part of a multi-generational community felt good. There aren't too many places in society where we get to experience that. Over the years, the congregation supported me through life's ups and downs, relationship breakups, my incessant wrestling with what to do with my life. The rituals and songs became part of me, and I liked the tangible experience of being part of something larger than myself. Looking back now, I realize there were also things I didn't think consciously about at the time that made me feel at home. The Protestant form and flavor of worship was familiar. So was the white middle-class culture. I was an NPR listener in a sea of NPR listeners, and a graduate student in a community where advanced degrees abounded. When I learned about some of the distinguished Americans from history who had been Unitarians and Universalists, Ralph Waldo Emerson, Henry David Thoreau, amazing women like Margaret Fuller, not to mention presidents and justices and reformers who worked for the abolition of slavery, the education of children, and much more. Well, this felt like good company to be in. And it wasn't just the history. The church was doing things right here, right now. This was the mid-90s, and the church I joined in Indiana had recently gone through an extensive educational process. This congregation has done it too. And they voted to become a welcoming congregation to lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender people. I joined other UUs at peace rallies and other actions. My UU community actively sought to shape our culture for the better. As notable 19th century Unitarian Theodore Parker would say, later to be echoed by Dr. King, we are a people who seek to help bend the arc of history toward justice. I knew that Unitarian Universalists were not the only religious people to put their faith into action in the public square, but I was impressed by how often UU forebears were on the leading edge of their time. Other things stood out too. No creeds, no formulations of faith that someone else had come up with long ago for reasons I didn't understand. I had walked away from those as an adolescent. The prospect of having to deal with that kind of stuff again was part of what had kept me from exploring spiritual communities ever since. At my new UU church, though, I encountered nothing that could not pass the test of my own reasoning powers or personal experience. It struck me as a common sense religion. But it wasn't just the lack of objectionable things that kept me from coming back. I found that Unitarian Universalists, or UUs for short, embraced wisdom from many sources. They kept what I considered the heart of the Christian tradition without the extraneous stuff. The simple religion of radical love that Jesus practiced, rather than the religion of myths and miracles and sacrificial atonement that others had created about him. But I would also hear inspiration from Taoism, from science, from the arts drawn into worship. I loved this. My own search was eclectic, and it seemed that was not only allowed, but encouraged in my new religious community. While there were and are no creeds, it wasn't long before I encountered a short list of what Unitarian Universalists stand for. The 7 principles were printed inside the hymnal. You can still find them there in the gray hymnal, and on a bookmark I received as a new member. They summed up well the commitments of UUs: honoring the inherent worth of all people, working for justice and compassion, encouragement to grow spiritually, practicing democracy, and recognizing our place in the interconnected web of life. It all matched up so well with my own values, so I was home. Now, I must acknowledge that as surprisingly different and lovely as it was, that first UU church where I became a member was not a perfect human community. People squabbled or misunderstood each other sometimes and wanted different things for the church and didn't always behave well. We were all still works in progress, as is true in congregations everywhere. Some people see that challenge in itself as a benefit of making a long-term commitment to a religious community. Sharad Yadav caps off his 10-point list of reasons to join a church with this one, and I'll paraphrase slightly. Joining a church is a life lesson in how to deal with unskillful people or even jerks without retaliating, dehumanizing, or running away, in the desperate hope of not becoming an unskillful person or a jerk yourself. So like most people who have been around a church for a while, sooner or later I experienced some of those challenges in my home congregation, and I had to decide whether to keep at it or just fade away from church life. Now, I've been thinking about another seeker lately, Nyota Uhura. Not just because of the death this past week of trailblazer Nichelle Nichols, may she rest in peace and power. As you may know, Nichols played the character of Lieutenant Uhura on the original Star Trek series and helped diversify the ranks of NASA, too. But I'm really thinking of her famous character because of the younger Uhura on the latest show from the Star Trek universe that came out this summer. In this new series, called Strange New Worlds, Uhura joins the Enterprise as a young cadet, serving with the captain prior to Captain Kirk. This youthful Uhura is searching earnestly, as I was when I first stepped into a UU church, as so many are. In her case, she's trying to find her place in the world after losing her parents, who died in the line of duty as Starfleet officers. Most of those around her on this starship had dreamed since childhood of serving in Starfleet, but Uhura at first just sees the Enterprise as a stopping-off place. While she lends her linguistic skills to the Starfleet mission, Uhura is trying to figure out who she is and where she belongs. Like any good Star Trek fan or Unitarian Universalist, Uhura is clearly a curious person. The fact that she speaks a stunning 37 Earth languages is testament to her cross-cultural skills. So exploring new worlds with a multi-species crew must be appealing to her. Watching her character develop over the first season, you see her bonding with other crew members. The Enterprise community, like UU churches, is a genuine community full of fascinating people, many of them with personalities, talents, and backgrounds that contrast with her own. They share her values, but in other ways are different from Uhura, and she seems to thrive on this. We know from the original series that Uhura ends up staying in Starfleet, but what keeps her there? By the end of season 1, the answer has not emerged yet. I suspect that some of the qualities that kept me in Unitarian Universalism kept Uhura in Starfleet. We're going to have a brief musical interlude now, and I invite you to reflect on what brought you to Unitarian Universalism, and if you've been UU for a while, you might muse on why you have remained actively engaged. Despite the challenges of dealing with other flawed humans and real community, despite the draw of other things one might do with limited time, and there are so many more options, distractions, demands on our time than there used to be, despite the disruption of old habits brought by the pandemic, and the inertia that can set in when friends are gone from the community, or kids are grown, or you're not in a searching phase spiritually, or you feel forgotten and apart, or you're just tired on Sunday mornings. Despite all that, you are here, and I am still here. I've continued to choose Unitarian Universalism for 2.5 decades. Some of the same things that brought me in the first place keep me coming back: the connections and intergenerational community, and the comforts of tradition, the openness of the UU search for truth and meaning, this faith's unique embrace of wisdom from many sources, and of course, the wonderful, interesting people with whom to continue the journey. But as my UU identity has grown, and I've come to know the tradition more deeply, there are 4 other things that remind me over and over why I want to keep coming back. These are the reasons I am hooked for good on Unitarian Universalism. The first of those 4 hooks is the dynamic, evolving quality of this tradition. Liberal religion has kept pace with the times since its beginnings, adapting itself to the new learnings of science, changing social norms and cultural shifts in the wider community. It's continuously evolving as a faith. As L.B. Fisher said a century ago, Universalists are often asked to tell where they stand. The only true answer is that we do not stand at all. We move. Different theological perspectives have moved through this tradition, for example, as has engagement with various ideas and causes. This congregation's own history illustrates that in the person of Newton Mann. There's a plaque of him at the back there. Mann served as minister here from 1880 to 1910 and had the distinction of being the first preacher in America to not only accept Darwin's theory of evolution, but to embrace it as religiously significant. More recently, this tradition is intentionally working to broaden our, yes, white middle-class roots to become more homey for people of all backgrounds. Unitarian Universalism is not a tradition frozen in the past, in some previous age in its understandings. It is alive. Closely tied to that continuous change is our commitment to the democratic process. That's the second hook for me. We practice democracy in our congregations, in our national association, and in the community around us. Making decisions as a group is messy and time-intensive. Sometimes democracy brings high emotion as conflicting perspectives or different priorities among people come to a head. But I believe democracy is worth the effort. It was Winston Churchill who put it so cleverly that democracy is the worst form of government, except for all the others. In our case, this way of making decisions reflects our deep belief in the inherent worth and dignity of every person. Every voice counts here. And it recognizes that we are not just individuals, but deeply interdependent with one another. We each bring the light. It takes all of us to have enough light for the community. The third aspect of Unitarian Universalism that fixes me to it is the centrality of spiritual growth. I can't cite a creed and be done with it. I can't even express fidelity to the 7 principles and then consider myself to have arrived spiritually. My individual spiritual growth, like that of our tradition at large, is meant to be a never-ending journey, one that is supported in a congregational community. This doesn't look the same from one person to another or from one year to another. For me, spiritual growth has come through activities as varied as taking a class on the historical Jesus. That's the first one I can remember doing. Participating in small group ministries, teaching kindergartners, establishing a meditation practice and later sharing it with others, serving on the board, offering newcomers a warm welcome, and the list goes on. I know that I would not be as decent and as happy a human being as I am today if not for all the ways that I have continued to grow through learning and service in UU communities. The last hook for me is a subset of this category of spiritual growth, and that is acting on my values to create a more just and compassionate world. After all, we are the interdependent web people who articulated our interconnectedness with the great ecological web of life as a core commitment in the 80s. We are the love people who have long celebrated the inherent worth and dignity of LGBT folks and advocated for their human rights in society. We are the yellow Side with Love shirt people who held our national convention in Joe Arpaio's backyard and communicated in candles and song that no one is illegal, no one is other. Since the Supreme Court's decision this summer to overturn Roe v. Wade, I have taken heart in remembering how Universalism was the first church in America to ordain a woman, with Olympia Brown in the 1860s, and how leaders for women's equality like Lucy Stone and many others have long found a home with Unitarians. And by the way, we're having a concert on August 28th for reproductive justice for abortion funds here in Nebraska. Don't miss it. We UUs tend to remember the heroes and sheroes of our tradition with admiration and pride. They speak to our own identities and the way we want to view ourselves. But we must remember that the storied activists and reformers of our history were often the radicals among even the Unitarians and Universalists of their own day. They were often criticized by others in their congregations and in our association. So it's not enough to claim affiliation with them because of our chosen church. We must, in our own lives, take positive action, choosing not only the comfort of UU communities, but also finding the courage this tradition asks us to muster. Henry Masserve once put it this way: if you were arrested for being Unitarian Universalist, would there be enough evidence to convict you? I got involved in racial justice work in my home congregation in my 20s, and it's been one of the most challenging and one of the most rewarding avenues of spiritual growth for me. Spirituality and social justice cannot be separated, at least I don't think, in genuine religion. Jesus didn't separate them. He acted in solidarity with the least of these, even at greatest cost. He was following in the footsteps of the rabble-rousers of the Hebrew Bible, like Amos and Isaiah. Those prophets saw their role as serving their community by calling out society's oppressive powers. For me, social action is rooted in the deepest spiritual knowledge, my experience of unity and interdependence and solidarity with all of life. The natural outgrowth of experiencing yourself as not truly separate, but as deeply connected to all others, is concrete action to relieve suffering and to create conditions for all to flourish. Now, one can certainly get involved in social change without being part of a religious community, but a community like this one can provide inspiration to act, support when you are discouraged, companions to join you in celebrating and strategizing and being frustrated and everything else, an ongoing renewal of your spirit. Without these, people are vulnerable to burnout. So what has hooked me on UUism for good is the dynamic character of our living tradition. It asks us to participate democratically and continue to grow spiritually, which includes putting our faith values into action. If you don't want to grow, this is not the church for you. Yes, it's natural to seek comfort and community and the celebration of life. Absolutely. We need all of those, and they're vital to religious community, and I really feel that in these recent days. But a UU life is not complete without the prophetic side and spiritual growth. We aren't here to coast on mere lofty ideas and animated conversations. We're called to act in the world, to bend the arc. If you're new, I'm going to level with you. It isn't easy to be a UU. and it shouldn't be. If you want easy answers, you're in the wrong place. If you want low aspirations, you're in the wrong place. I suspect this is what ultimately keeps Uhura in Starfleet, too. Not only the community of people, imperfect and beloved, not only the opportunity for exploration, but the invitation to grow and contribute, the challenge. It's more than most people would sign up for. But Uhura ultimately will not settle for less than Starfleet. And I will not settle for anything less than authentic Unitarian Universalism. And you? If you relish the ongoing journey, if you love to explore and expand your spiritual horizon, if you are up for the messy work of democracy and you want to be part of bending the arc of history toward justice and love, not just in the abstract, but in the particulars of our own community, and if you want wonderful, flawed, but sincere and real and caring companions on this journey, then you are in the right place. That's what I want too. That's why I'm here. That's why I am a Unitarian Universalist. I invite you to join me in our closing hymn, number 1018, Come and Go With Me. This has a little beat to it, so feel free to stand and sing or sit and sway or whatever feels good to your body. Number 1018 in the teal hymnal.
Come and go with me to that land. Come and go with me to that land. Come and go with me to that land where I'm bound, where I'm bound. Come and go with me to that land. Come and go with me to that land. Come and go with me to that land where I'm bound. There'll be freedom in that land. There'll be freedom in that land. There'll be freedom in that land where I'm bound. There'll be freedom in that land. There'll be freedom in that land. There'll be freedom in that land where I'm bound. There'll be justice in that land. There'll be justice in that land. There'll be justice in that land. Where I'm bound, where I'm bound. There'll be freedom in that land. There'll be justice in that land. There'll be justice in that land where I'm bound. There'll be singing in that land. There'll be singing in that land. There'll be singing in that land where I'm bound, where I'm bound. There'll be singing in that land. There'll be singing in that land. There'll be singing in that land where I'm bound.
I share with you once more the words of Edward L. Shimp, this time as an invitation. As Unitarian Universalists, let us hold faith in people, hope for tomorrow's child, and confidence in a continuity that spans all time. Let us look not to a perfect heaven, but to a good earth. May we be respectful of the past, but not limited to it. May we trust in growing and conspire with change. Let us take spiritual responsibility for a moral tomorrow. May it be so. Amen.